Hey, welcome everyone. Today we have a phenomenal guest. I'm really excited to chat with Daisy Xia. And Daisy is currently the head of strategy and financial planning and analytics at Revolut. And she is going to talk about how to amplify your personal brand using your voice. And it's such a wonderful and important topic because we don't think about enough how to use our voices and how we are perceived based on our voice and how we can leverage that to our own advantage and to the advantage of others as well. Because when we perfect our personal brand using our voice, then we're also able to better align with others and ensure that people understand how we can add value. We're able to add more value. And Daisy's going to share a lot about that today with us. So welcome, Daisy.
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure, and I'm very much looking forward to have the discussion with you today.
Yes, yes. So you're at a stage in your career where now you give a lot of advice.
Absolutely. So I guess I had the fortunate to coach such mentoring people along the way, especially I would say more entry level, just out of school or a few years out of school. They're new, they're junior in their career. And what I'll tell you actually is what the advice is I don't give to them. So I found out they don't need my advice on job specific skills because they're excellent in analytics, they're excellent in finance and in all those fancy tools. They don't need me to give them advice in the business, the product, because they're very advanced. Like they are in this tech industry or fintech industry, they start using those products all along. So they don't need my advice on that. However, what I found the most thing I say to them is I need to hear your voice. Other people need to hear your voice. They need to know who you are because everybody can see the result you deliver. You deliver great result, but you need to let people know who is behind those results, like who made this happen. So speak up. The thing I say to them is speak up. And sometimes I only half jokingly say is if you go to the meeting and you didn't say a word in the meeting, then that's a meeting either you should not go or you're not adding value. You're not doing justice to yourself, to your time. And this little trick I say, set this mandate to yourself that in every meeting, I must say something. I can ask a question. I can make a comment. Even I can rephrase, say that to someone, hey, I just heard you say that. I'll just try to rephrase, make sure I hear you correctly. Like you don't even need to come up with anything new. You could just very simply rephrase what you heard and make sure you understand, or even bring everybody in the meeting on the same page. This is the alignment, things like that. Yeah, go back to your question. I think the thing I said the most to others and especially younger folks is speak up and let your voice come out.
Oh boy, I wish I had you giving me that pep talk when I was in my early 20s. I absolutely needed that. It probably took me way too long to figure that out. I like how you really push people beyond their comfort zone and say, hey, we want to hear your voice, because a lot of people, when they're junior, and this included me as well, thought that it was not my place, that my leaders wanted me to stay quiet and listen. Hearing from you that they should speak up, that you expect them to speak up, is going to completely change how they interact. And it's going to also probably increase their confidence tremendously.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing I think is we talk about what's the expectation from the leader. I think I originally come from China, so this is, and being a woman. So there is a little bit like a cultural background or the education that we have received or this perception, like social perception of who we need to be, how do we need to behave or perform. So there is a little bit of that is I need to follow orders. I need to fill in whatever request came to me. I need to put in everything I have in the work, deliver a fantastic result. I need to work extremely hard. I work 100% or 120%. And as long as I do that, as long as I deliver the result, everything else will come naturally. I think especially I remember when I started, that's almost the mindset I I just had. I couldn't really figure out where it came from, but that's something I had in my mind is it's all about performing, it's all about delivering, and it's all about doing a hard work. So I think what a lot of folks, especially younger or women, we didn't realize is, yes, delivering result is only part of the puzzle. The other part, or maybe you can argue the bigger part of the puzzle is your voice, to let people know who you are and to share your point of view, not only delivering, but your thought process, what's in your mind. So that's something I often share with whoever reports to me or whoever I work with or I mentor. So that goes back to what's the mindset we originally had and what is the mindset maybe actually men didn't have. So that's also a big difference.
Yeah, and it's a huge difference. I wonder, when was the first time that you started thinking about your personal brand? Because you're saying that you were really focusing on working hard and doing all the work and maybe the technical part, which I'm sure you're already great at. And you said that the people that you mentor are already great at the technical aspects of the job. When was it that you started to think about your personal brand, and why did you try to build it in the first place? Because often it takes some time before people start to think about their personal brand and how to build it and the value of having a personal brand.
Yes, I remember in my first job out of school, the company has this performance review, and we do that every 6 months. I think in many companies they do that. Some companies do that quarterly, every 6 months, or annually. So most of the company has those performance cycle. I remember in the first few cycles, I realized I'm getting the same feedback. I'm getting from different managers or my skip levels or people I work with. I get very similar feedbacks. And the keywords in their feedbacks to me, Daisy is hardworking. Daisy is a great team player. And Daisy is very result driven. And Daisy is quiet. And or the development area they put for me, it's always one word: communication. And if I start to unpack a little bit more, what do you mean by communication? What kind of communication? It always comes down to either communicating with customers, communicating with stakeholders, or influential. Like, how do you convince others about your case, about your idea? So that hit me, is if I'm getting the same review or same feedback year after year, cycle after cycle, I need to break this. At that time, I realized I have a brand because we were using the same words. I have a brand in others' eye. Do I like those brand, or do I want something I don't have on in those review? And I wanted to add things like confident, influential, passionate, persuasive, or driven, or leadership. Those are things I wanted to have, and I wanted to have others tag me or relate me to those brands. So that's the moment I start realizing I need to change how I work. So it's not to change who I am, but it's more to change how I work, how I present myself to others, so they can change, the hash they had with me. So that's the moment I start thinking to myself. I start talking to my managers. I start talking to mentors I had back then, and try to figure out what I can be doing differently.
Oh, that's fascinating. Because for me, that word was nice as well and hardworking. I think a lot of the women tend to get collaborative, friendly, hardworking. You said team player, all these like kind, soft, nice words that don't actually help us get ahead. And the words that you were looking for, driven, leadership, all these other words that were not coming to you were the words that you actually needed to be perceived in a way that people would want to put you in bigger projects and give you more responsibility, give you the next level opportunity. So I
Yeah,
like that story.
absolutely.
All right. So you discovered early on, and luckily you did get feedback that made you realize, hey, this is not what I want here. I need to change this. And that's not easy. A lot of people will actually enjoy those words, the nice, collaborative, team player, hard work. They're not going to realize that's not going to serve them. But you were able to quickly understand what you wanted, how you wanted to hashtag yourself. And then you went for it and used your voice to do that, which is exactly what they said you didn't do well, which is communicate. So where did you start?
So I would say I started with baby steps because at that time I felt like I feel comfortable communicating. What do you mean by I don't communicate? I have nice conversation with my coworkers, my team members. I can share everything I'm thinking with my manager because I'm actually pretty straightforward personality wise. So what do they mean? Like I wanted to double click into that. I think it comes down to when I'm presented in a bigger meeting with multiple audience or with people much senior than me, do I have the confidence to speak up? So I started with baby steps as a what if I start saying more things in the team meeting because we work together very closely. We see each other on a daily basis. Do I feel comfortable saying what I'm thinking or even object their point of view in those settings? Start doing a little bit more of that. And then I, of course, start expanding this into maybe a meeting with a partner team we work closely with, or maybe a bigger skip level team meeting. So like, can I do those? So it's more start with a setting you feel most comfortable with, and then start pushing yourselves a little bit out of your comfort zone, one meeting at a time. So that's what I said to myself. And also the mandate I mentioned to you earlier, the mandate I said to whoever I am interested is say something to me. That's exactly what I said to myself. I pushed myself and say, hey, Daisy, you have to say something. You have to say anything. I don't care what I said. You have to say something in any meeting I go to. So that's how I gradually and slowly pushing myself out of the comfort zone and try to get to a place I wanted to be.
All right. So you were pushing yourself to have those conversations. And I also found interesting that you had to dig a little bit deeper in that feedback that you got, which was you have to improve your communication. And you're absolutely right when you say that's so broad. There's so many aspects of communication, different types of mediums of communication, different people that you might be talking to, different situations. So to get that clarity around the fact that it wasn't your communication overall, it was just they wanted to hear you confidently expressing your thoughts in meetings with senior stakeholders. That's a big thing. And that allowed you then to focus on that one area that your leaders were looking for some change in you and in your communication. And then you created that rule for yourself to push yourself. So how long did it take from the moment you said, let me start one meeting at a time? How long did it take before you started to feel a little bit more comfortable having those conversations, speaking up, sharing your thoughts in these meetings with more senior people?
Yeah, so it's a long journey, I would say, because I'm not someone naturally born with that. And especially you try to push yourself like from within, it's actually hard. I remember it took me at least a couple of years to get to a place that sitting with people I know. Again, this is still, I would call it still my like social circle, like at work social circle, like to speak up with people I know. So it took me a couple of years to get there. And I'll share you another story here. I don't know, this is a little bit personal story. It's a little bit like when I learned how to drive. I was terrified when I learn how to drive. I go to the driving schools and I get all the training, do the test, all that. I'm terrified. But I know there's something I have to do. I have to learn how to drive. I have to be able to drive from place to another place. So I'm in this like very nervous stage of driving. Like every time I sit in my car, I'm like I feel nervous, anxious. Like I need to really plan everything in my head. Which foot do I press, and which button do I turn on? That stuff. Like I have to rehearse in my mind. But there was one opportunity, like one moment I had to drive overstate. I have to spend 7 hours on the road, all highway, drive to another place. And I'm like, there's no way I can do this. And because before that, I only drive 20 minutes at the most. But this is the event I had to go. And there was no choice. So I did. I drove 7 hours. I got there safely. It was pouring on the road, so it's probably the worst driving condition, but I did it. And then after that, I'm not terrified. I started enjoying driving, because in my mind it was, hey, I did that trip before. Like I safely, successfully did that trip. There's nothing in terms of driving could scare me. The reason I share this story is exactly how I felt at the moment. I started speaking a little bit more in the meetings. I felt, hey, I can talk in front of people, small audience, but still I can share. I can ask question. I can make my case. I can do a presentation. I can have a very healthy sort of discussion with folks. Now to the point is, what else do I need to do? Like, how do I clear my inner fear in me of speaking publicly? And every company has those town halls, like all hands town halls. You have, I don't know, hundreds of people gathering, and it's a few hours or even half day, full day events. And in every town hall, there's always that Q&A session. And oftentimes nobody asks questions, or few people ask questions. And whoever the host on the stage will be like, any more questions? They have to prompt the audience a couple of times. Do you guys have any questions? So then I thought to myself, why it cannot be me? Why can't I raise my hand and ask a question in front of, I don't know, 200, 300, 500 people? Why I never did that before? I should do that. I should try it. Because to me, it's a feel like, if I can do that, if I can ask a question, say one thing in front of that many people, it will be like my 7-hour drive trip to me. It will clear all the fear I had, and those fears. It's not anything really scary, just the fear I had in my mind. So that's why I shared you this little personal story, because that's what made me to decide to take this challenge for myself, that I need to say something in front of many people. And I wanted to see if I can do that.
I like how you're constantly challenging yourself with these little missions, like, oh, I'm going to do this. Now, Daisy, you're going to speak in every meeting at least once. Okay, you're going to, new challenge. You're going to have to drive interstate. New challenge. Raise your hand in the town hall. And all of this, thinking as well about how to build your personal brand, because you're overcoming this initial perception that people had of you by also putting yourself in uncomfortable situations so that you could develop those habits that would make you be seen as a good communicator in those situations, like a confident communicator in those situations. In those town halls, you would start to raise your hand. How did that go for you? In the beginning, it was scary. How did you go through it? How did you progress? How did you overcome the fear of maybe not having a good question to ask?
Yeah, that's what you said is actually very common. And I got when I ask others, like when I coach someone, say, hey, you actually need to ask questions more. And you're like, I don't have a good question. I don't know what to ask. What if I ask a very silly question, and wouldn't that be embarrassing? Like, how people gonna perceive me asking a little, silly or stupid question? So I got that a lot. So then my response is actually a question for them is, hey, for instance, Emma asked me this many years ago, exactly that. So I said, Emma, think about the town hall we had last month. Do you remember what questions people asked? Do you really remember? What do you remember from the Q&A session? And she will be like, oh, I do remember some guy from the product team asked a question regarding the latest app, but I don't remember exactly what he asked. I don't have recollection of that. So I said, yes, that's true, because nobody gonna remember what exactly you ask, but people will remember. That's why I often say use your voice to build a brand and speak up more, because what people gonna remember from those questions, comments, everything you say to them or in the meetings, all they're going to remember is you are a person engaging. You put a lot of thoughts into work, and you always looking for opportunities to share your point of view. So that's what they're going to remember. They won't remember what exactly you ask. So that's how I almost remove the hurdle in my mind. What if my question is stupid? Because nobody gonna care. But more importantly is I wanted to become the person that is a little bit fearless of speaking up, fearless of let my voice out. So that's the most important thing. And a little bit, so I will share you. I still to this day I remember this very vividly. That first town hall, I decided to ask a question. It was a nerve-wracking moment for me. I was nervous. My heart started pumping faster and faster when I get closer to the Q&A session. My palm was like sweating a little bit, and I couldn't really focus on what exactly the content before the Q&A, because I'm just in my mind, I'm like fiercely trying to think of a question. And of course, I didn't have great questions back then. I remember my first question is like a very cliche question, like, what keep you up at night? What do you think is the biggest risk of this organization? That type of thing. But here's the thing, like the moment I got the mic, they gave you a mic because it's a large audience, like in a huge theater. So the moment I got the mic, I speak to the mic, my voice was loud. Everybody could hear me. That's what I need. That's the moment, that's the feeling I remember, and I can carry that on. And then over time, because I start doing this more and more, every time, every those big meetings, I start asking questions. I realize, hey, I'm getting used to that sort of, if you will. I can listen. I actually can listen before the Q&A session. I can pay attention to what they talk about. First would be those, as I said, little bit cliche questions, and then I start asking questions more relevant to the content. If whoever present something is interesting, or I could have a follow-up question, and because I wanted to learn a little bit more, understand a little bit more of that. And as time goes on, I feel like I also can relate what I do at work or what I read from the news, what I learned from industry competitors. How do I connect those information to the leaders, executives presented on the stage? I can have a little bit dialogue with them. And even towards the end, those town halls also becomes a very useful information session for me to know what else is going on beyond my team, beyond my organization, like knows. And then I can connect dots. Hey, I hear you talk about this project. I'm very interested because my team is doing something could be very relevant. I love for us to collaborate more. I could identify those opportunities for myself, for my team, or for the organization. So those meetings not only becomes not only encourage me, give me the confidence of speaking up, it actually becomes a little bit of platform for myself, for the team to have more collaboration opportunities.
In this ocean of people, which is this town hall, you were essentially, by raising your hand and asking a question, you were bringing attention to yourself. You were getting the CEO and other leaders to see you. And then you took that step further and you did almost like a little bit of networking in front of all those people. Was that in front of everyone? Let me just confirm. When you were offering and saying, this is an interesting area, this is something that I think we could collaborate on, or my team could help out with, was that in that town hall Q&A session? Or was that a conversation that you had afterwards in the hallways?
It happened both. There are town halls like in front of everybody. Of course, we wouldn't be able to have any discussion right in front of everybody. But it's like I say I want to plant a seed with you because my team over there is doing something I think is very relevant. I love to talk to you more, or further discuss with you further on this topic after the meeting, or maybe after, because sometimes, a lot of times, there are a little bit like social networking event after the town hall. I can go find this person, say, hey, I heard you say this, and I love to share my point of view on this topic. So it happens in both scenarios, but I think the most important thing for me is I was able to speak out, like to say what's in my mind in those occasions. So that to me is actually a very, it's I wouldn't say game changer, but it was the moment that I start pivoting myself from doing heads down work to someone can bring bigger value to the organization.
Wow. So you saw yourself more able to bring big value to the organization by being someone who spoke up.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. And just a quick recap. So what were the phases that you went through to get comfortable and being able to really leverage that moment of sharing your ideas in town halls and in these big meetings? So the first one was just to ask any silly question, fabricated
Like
question.
say questions. Those are, in my mind, those are questions you almost don't need to go to the meeting. You can ask the questions. What's the biggest accomplishment you had in this quarter, or what keeps you at night, keeps you up at night? So those are basic foundational questions. Anybody, if you really don't have any questions to ask, but you wanted to push yourself to say something in the meeting, you can use those questions.
Okay, so that's level one and
level one
totally
question.
worth doing because
Right.
people are only going to remember that you spoke up. What was level two? The level two?
So level two would be I pay attention, listen to the content, and looking for topics or areas I'm interested, and ask follow-up questions, ask clarification questions, and or maybe just ask a little bit, like double click. Hey, can you elaborate? You mentioned this. Can you elaborate this on this a little bit more, because I wanted to learn more. So that type of questions is more, it to me it's like relevant, directly relevant to the topic, to the content.
Got it. And then level three is to link what they are saying to what you do and connecting those dots.
Yes. So level three I think that could be level three. I think level three to me is a little bit more based on my understanding or knowledge about the company, maybe the industry, the competitors, the market, and I wanted to have a little bit like dialogue, mini discussion. You said this is what we're working on, the company's working on this, or the company's priorities is this. In the same time, based on the market trend, based on what competitors are up to, how do we think about that? Like, how do we think about, so the company strategy versus the microeconomics, that type of thing. So to me, I made the connection, what you described as the phase four, I made that connection a little bit later on to be able to find the collaboration point. I made that connection later on. But to me, the is a little bit more double click into or connecting what we are doing in this company to a broader context.
Got it. So the collaboration is phase four, and the phase three is connecting with what you know and your experience. Okay, that's fabulous. Now our listeners have a little ladder to go up so that they can increase their visibility and personal brand in those town halls, or let's say even a big meeting with a lot of people. Now, I want to move to something else that you shared, which is the concept of golden three. The golden three and how you use that to build your personal brand quite early on in your career as well. So could you share a little bit more about how you use that approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So this I found is also a very common concept that when someone is new to this professional world or to a new role, new team, new company, and oftentimes they think, hey, I'm new here. I only be here for a week, for a month. I don't know better. So the best thing for me to do is listen and learn and absorb as much as I can. When I get myself more situated, more educated, then I can make valuable comment. Then I can speak up. But I disagree with that. To me, that's what I share with you. I named it like golden 3 months of any new job, new project, new team. Is for the first 3 months of your job, you have this security blanket that I can ask anything. I can say anything because I'm new. You cannot blame me for saying silly words because I'm the newest member here. And I say that, right? When I ask a question, like when I ask too many questions, I say, hey, forgive me asking so many questions because I'm new here. I don't have the context. I don't have the background. I wanted to learn more. Can you elaborate more? Oh, you said this, but I don't quite follow. Can you repeat that one more time? This is the moment you have this umbrella. It protects you. And you to me, I have this umbrella. It's more for myself. It's actually self-consciousness. In my mind, I worried about asking questions. I worried about making inappropriate comments. But once I have this like security blanket for myself, I feel more safe. Like I feel safer. I feel more confident and more comfortable to say anything in my mind. So that's to me the most important and the best time for asking questions and to speak up.
I like that. So the golden 3 months is like a safety blanket. Daisy, would you rather be perceived as someone who talks too much or is too quiet in the workplace?
This is the thing. In workplace, I often say there's no over communication. And this probably a little bit relate to being a woman. And we worry about that. Hey, I've told Mike this thing 2 weeks ago. Should I bring this up again? Or he should have already known. Should I say that one more time? Should I ask a question again? But in workplace, everybody is busy. And there's no, in my mind, that's why I said there's no such thing of over communication. You can always double check. You can always rephrase. You can always reconfirm yourself. And you can always re-deliver your story. So to answer your question, I don't want to be perceived as a person too quiet, because if that's the case, means they don't know who I am, what I'm thinking, what I'm capable of. And I don't worry about being someone talk too much, because, and when I say talk too much, of course, effective, productive work communications, not just chat. So in that concept or in that definition, there's no over communication.
I agree with you. Wonderful. It's so great to hear that from more women in an environment like finance, analytics, planning, who came from an Asian culture, from China. And you're saying these things like, yes, I want my voice to be heard, because that allows me to know that people understand what I can do and how I can bring value to the organization.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is especially after in-depth conversations, like heart-to-heart conversations with either my team members or people I mentor with, is that there are especially junior women. So they have a lot of great ideas in their mind. They understand what they're doing. They understand the organization. They have great ideas, great initiatives of how we can change things and how we can do things differently. Or they have opinions about whatever somebody else is saying. So they have all that. But I only hear those during our one-on-ones. To me, that is a shame. So that's why I keep pushing them. You have to say all those things out, because you have a lot of going on in your mind. Those are all great. Those are valuable. Those are the things I wish more people can hear. And you are the person are responsible for that. You need to let others hear you. So that's why I keep saying, speak up, let your voice heard, because they're valuable. They're worthwhile. So that's why I say that to myself, because I believe my point of view has a value.
Yeah, and it certainly does. That's why I also say that part of the purpose of all of this podcast is to help these professionals amplify their voice, because when they amplify their voice, they amplify their impact, they amplify their leadership, they even amplify their career. And without the voice, you can't really contribute to all of the extent that you wish. So it's like sales is something that a lot of people are uncomfortable with. And the reality is, if you have a great product, a great vision, but you don't sell it and you don't push towards a sale, you're not going to help anyone. It's a very similar thing. And it's interesting because a lot of people are stuck in that idea of what they should do and of being humble and of being quiet, but they're missing the point that their voice is the pathway, is the bridge to contribution. And there's so much value inside of them that can only come out. And just saying it once is not enough. It takes so much to influence and persuade people. So the fact that you're bringing that to the people who are starting out in their careers who haven't figured that out yet, you're saving them so much time. I'd love to get an example of the 3 golden months if you've used it in your career, and how did it go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stories I'm going to share also tie back to me fearlessly or shamelessly asking all the questions I have. This is from a place I worked before, and it was a startup company. It was new and they move things very fast. And what happens with moving things very fast is that there's a lack of process management. There's a lack of documentation because the work you're doing this week is different than the work you did last week. The process you have this week is very different than, or maybe very different than the process they had in the previous week. So I entered into this team, and then I tried to figure out how to work, how things were done there. And everybody was like, oh, we just do this way, that way, because we have to deliver this in 48 hours. That's the only option we had to get this done. So I hear those kind of comments a lot. And then I remember in my first 3 months, I just almost interrogating everybody I work with. Explain to me how you get this done. No, say that one more time, from start to beginning, one more time, because I have to document everything. And I say, you have to forgive me. You have to repeat this several times to me because I'm new. This is a quite complex product, so I need to learn this. And I bugged everybody, almost everybody in the team, in the partner teams, whoever we work with. And then I collecting all the information I have, and I was able to map out a process they have. And with that documentation, right, without that process, I can use that to go to people, the product owner, the project owner, the partner teams. I can go to them and say, hey, this is my understanding of the product and process. Here's the whole map. Let's take a look. And at that point, it becomes very obvious we were doing things in circles. There's a lot of efficiency loss because we from point A to B, P to A several times until we move to point C. But without all those interviews, right, investigation, without all the millions questions asked to all those folks, I wouldn't be able to get that. Because I would imagine, right, if I didn't do that in my first 3 months. If I did that, if I wanted to do that a year in, and I think in my mind, I would be like, hey, I'm here for a year or 2 years. I still don't know the process. Is that a little bit embarrassing? Can I ask all those questions? I think they would assume I already knew everything. Like, how could I still asking all the? I would have a lot of mental baggage. But in the first 3 months, I didn't have any of that. So I map out the whole thing, document the whole thing, and I use this as a very powerful statement. Statement in the way that the fact speaks for itself. I don't even need to make my case. See, this is how we're doing it, and you see how this is why we have to spend so much time in this one process because it's not efficient, and we have to change it. And here is how we can change it. And I was able to push my ideas almost like very easily. Like I can get buy-in very quickly, and we change it, and everybody's happier than they were before, and things got done faster than it was before. And also like that documentation becomes a little bit, I would say, a little bit tradition for the finance analytic team that we have to document everything. And then with the documentation, little tradition, either from the analytics or data or finance procedures, it becomes a very strong foundation for the company later on to pass audit, right? To pass the SOC 2 review, stuff like that. So now I think back to that, is like, that's because the first 3 months I asked all the questions and I was not ashamed of doing that. And I got the support from everybody because, oh, Daisy is the new girl. We need to teach her. We need to educate her. So that's all connecting to how I could use the first 3 months of being on new job.
Interrogating. I like that strategy because it gets people on board with explaining things to you. At the same time, you're making sure you confirm the understanding of what the processes are. You're involving multiple stakeholders. And then once you have it all designed, you're adding value because you're looking for ways jointly to improve it, which gives more opportunities to share your ideas and get people's ideas. And then ultimately you're delivering something that's repeatable and adds value and improves the overall process and helps out with newbies who are coming in as well. And it gave you the opportunity to build your brand because you were getting exposure to people. You were communicating, initially asking questions, but later even with suggestions. One of the things that you shared in our previous conversation was this idea of not being the note taker in meetings, and how you shifted from note taking to speaking in one of your early jobs.
Yeah, so this I don't know if everybody or the listeners have noticed that there's always a girl, a lady, a female woman in the meeting room very diligently taking notes of the discussion and send out the meeting notes to the audience. Hey, this is what we discussed. Here's our next steps. It's all very beautifully written in a email. I was one of them. And first of all, like the reason I started doing that is because I wanted to make sure everything is captured. I want to make sure all the next steps we discussed in the meeting are clearly documented so people can work on this. Because I had the urge of I wanted to have things organized. I wanted to organize for the team. That was the mindset I had. And also, at that time I felt like I'm adding value because I'm the only one taking notes. If I didn't do that, who gonna remember all the discussion, like all the valuable conversation we had? At that point, I thought that's my way of adding value. But what I start realizing, I don't say anything in the meeting because I'm taking notes. Because I'm too busy taking notes. I try to type everything I hear. I try to summarize everything other folks are discussing, but I'm not saying anything. What's the value I am adding to the discussion? Yes, I'm probably adding value to the team because the team has a documentation, have a very detailed notes for every meeting. But what's the value I'm adding to those discussions? I'm not adding anything. So that thought came to me that I need to say something, and I don't need to be. I still could be the person sending out the sort of the next steps, just to summarize the next steps, and use that as a platform for me to almost like with people say, hey, we had this meeting 2 days ago. I just want to follow up on this action item. I can still do that. That's the thing I still do until today. But I don't want to position myself like sitting on in the corner of the meeting room and quietly and heads down looking at my computer and just typing. That's not the image I want to have. Because I have ideas, I have thoughts. And when people say something, I wanted to object. I wanted to propose something I think is better. So I need to use my time in those meetings, and I have to participate and engage in those conversations. So that's a thought I have. And of course, it's not something I can just start doing overnight. I don't do that immediately. And because I need to train myself, to get to that stage. That's the training. That's a little self-training with team meetings, with broader audience, or with town halls. Those are all the trainings I set up for myself to prep myself to be ready to share my ideas effectively and confidently in those discussions. It's all connected. And I'll always go back to my original point is that a lot of us, we do have great ideas, but we need to find the confidence in ourselves and find the effective way to communicate it out.
Absolutely. And another thought that came to me right now was that role of quietly taking notes of the meeting and summarizing it now can be done with AI.
Absolutely.
It's totally replaceable.
One more reason of not doing it.
Your ideas, your thoughts, that's something that's special. That's you, that AI is not going to be able to bring to the table, to the meeting. So it's a much better investment of time for sure.
For
This has
sure.
been wonderful. A couple of takeaways that I see for our listeners. Focus on using your voice. Raise your hand in those town halls, in those meetings. Stop taking notes. Focus on making your voice heard, sharing your thoughts, even if it initially, if you're asking a question that sounds stupid, but start somewhere. And eventually it will evolve and you will get better and you will be able to not be so much in your head and be present in the moment and be able to contribute in a better and stronger way. But it has to start somewhere. So raise your hand, share your voice, build your personal brand with it, and make sure that you understand how people are labeling you or hashtagging you so that you can align that voice that you have with the labels and the hashtags that you want to have. Those are my takeaways from this conversation with you, Daisy. Love it.
Yeah, I think you summarized it very well. And I think that's everything I wanted to share. And I think this probably, when I look back my career, this is probably the most important learning I have learned along the way. I'm very honored and very happy to have this opportunity to share that with more people, especially women in corporate America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been an honor. Thank you so much, Daisy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. That's a pleasure.